Houston, we have a problem. That was indeed my steering box, and it's not supposed to be moving at all, and especially not up and down. We went on an adventure a couple of days ago over the weekend and did some overlanding that involved going over some rocks. I wouldn't call it rock crawling, but we were going over a few, and I apparently really stressed out my steering, and I noticed, you'll see later in this video, we have some clips of some of the stuff that we did, and you will see one particular spot where you will see me coming down and going over some rocks. One rock in particular I hit and kind of rolled it a little bit, which I don't think caused the damage. But I do think it was in that spot on the way back up that I perhaps jarred something, hit a rock. I noticed as we were climbing back out of that canyon that I was looking out my driver's side window, and I was seeing that my tire on the driver's side seemed to be acting a little bit weird, like flexing weird in comparison to what I was feeling in the steering wheel. And so we got back to camp. I didn't really notice much once we got back out of the rocks. We got back to camp, and after we got loaded up with our gear and started heading home, I was very aware that there was much more play in the steering wheel than usual. I was getting a half a turn without any real change in my course of direction. So we kind of limped home. I did kind of set an arbitrary speed of 50 miles an hour, what I was comfortable going, feeling that something was not right with the steering. When we stopped on the way home, about 20 minutes from home, to get some dinner, and in the parking lot I asked my wife, look at the front tires. As I turn the wheel, are they turning symmetrically? And she looked at them and she said, no, the passenger side is moving, the driver's side is not. And that was kind of the sensation that I had while driving. You know, there's a couple other weird things. I won't bore you with details, but we took it easy the rest of the way home, and let me show you this spot. As I got to this point, I turned towards the bushes so that I could back the Jeep into the driveway to facilitate unloading. And as I turned it and got it close to the lock, I don't like to hit the lock, so I always try to stop short. But as I got close to it, I heard a loud pop, and then I lost probably 90% of my steering. And so I did like a 5-point turn and got the Jeep into the place you see it now. I switched places with my wife and had her steer, and I noticed what you saw in the intro of this video, that steering box shifting up and down with steering and very little steering. And what happened was the bolts holding the steering box on sheared off. I haven't pulled the top one out. The bottom two I was able to just pull out. They weren't attached to anything. They are right here. You can see they sheared off at exactly the same place. Just completely broke. So I reached out to my buddy Joe, who I've talked about before. When I bought the Jeep, Joe and I rebuilt the steering box, but I couldn't get one of the components out, and so there is a part of it that we didn't get new gaskets on. So it's about 3/4 rebuilt. It has been acting fine, and I think the box itself is okay, because what broke were the bolts. However, I've decided that this is a good time to replace the steering box. Common upgrade is to use a steering box out of the Durango, but as I've been doing some research the last few days, the consensus seems to be that that's not really an upgrade. That's more of a lateral move. The steering box works. People like how smooth it is, but they lose some of the turning radius, as I have been reading in some forums, and also some people have commented on YouTube University. So the other thing, as I've been looking for specifically upgraded steering boxes, a little bit more heavy duty steering boxes, everyone seems to think that the stock setup is pretty okay if you're not doing heavy duty rock crawling and you have tires under 31 inches. I'm running 30-inch tires. Those are as big as I'm planning to get. I'm building this to be an Overlander. So I don't feel that I need a heavy-duty steering box upgrade. Also, in talking to Joe, we both feel that these bolts gave way because it is highly plausible and likely that they are the original bolts. And so they have been dealing with 35 years of turning stress. And they just finally fatigued and gave out. That said, I am going to replace the box with a remanufactured box. It is otherwise going to be stock, but I will have some peace of mind knowing that it has been gone through and all the seals and stuff have been redone, and it is as like new as you can get. And then, of course, I'm going to have to get some new bolts. The original bolts are a 7/16 with a, I believe it's a 14. Yes, it's a grade 8, or a 7/16 with a 14 thread pitch. On one forum, somebody recommended drilling out the threads on the new steering box and retapping it to a 1/2 inch. And that is a consideration that might be the main upgrade that I need. So to get the steering box out, at least what's left of mine, I did have to get some specialty tools, and that's what has been causing a couple days delay. First thing you need is a Pitman arm puller. You can rent these from O'Reilly's or AutoZone. I decided to just go ahead and invest in one. I got this for about $20 off of Amazon. This is the Performance Tool brand. Harbor Freight has one that I'm sure is up to the task for about $15. This one just seemed a little bit better quality to me, so I decided to spend the extra couple of bucks. And I think that the lips right here are a little bit thinner on this one, which I remember when I rebuilt it earlier that the Pitman arm was so tight up against the box that Joe and I barely found in his collection of stuff one that fit. So these being a little bit thinner was also enticing. The other thing that you need that I had to get is a 33 millimeter socket to get the Pitman arm nut off. And the best way to do that is with a impact wrench, which I unfortunately have. But if not, I would kind of be in a heap of trouble because you would want the box to still be attached if you were going to try and get that bolt off with manpower. With an impact gun, I should be able to still get it with the box being somewhat disconnected. Well, I'm going to have to send this one back because the jaws are not wide enough, so it won't fit my application. However, Performance Tool is the brand that O'Reilly's sells, and I believe they have one in stock that will work. So I'm just going to run down there, and it's about the same price. So I'm going to run down there and see if I can get that and finish getting this Pitman arm off. The nut came off pretty easily with the impact gun, so that worked great. So this is the next step. I have the steering box out, and I found that the top bolt was actually fine, but it was not engaged, and so I think that it was not connected, and so the steering box was riding on just the two bottom bolts, the ones that sheared. I did a little experimentation. I drilled out one of the holes and tapped it to a coarse 1/2-inch thread, which is a coarse 13, I believe. And this does work, but there's quite a bit of play in that. Now, I did cinch it down tight, and I do think it would hold, I think pretty confidently, but compared to, we go down to one of the other ones, one of the normal ones, and put in the last good bolt, which is the 7/16. You can see it may look like it's more play just because this is a lot taller, but it really is less. This is a much tighter fit. With that in mind, I think what I want to do is stick with the stock size. So I'm going to stay with the 7/16. I do believe that the top bolt needs to be longer so that it will engage in the steering box and cinch it up tight. With all three, I think it will hold tight enough. Time will tell. If it breaks again in 2 years, then at that point I will drill and tap a bigger size. So that's the game plan. I am also going to keep the washers that were on it, because these are a little thicker washer than they typically sell at Ace or Lowe's or whichever place. So I'm going to stay with the original washers, but all the bolts will be replaced.
there's a rock that you're hitting. It's going to roll as you go forward, so you're good.
Back up.
No, you're good. Yep, keep coming. Yep, keep coming this way. Come this way. And go this way. You made it.
I have acquired a remanufactured steering box from O'Reilly's and new hardware. I've got some power steering fluid. I don't know if these two partially full containers have enough. I may have to make a zip to the store or send someone, but we'll see. And then the new hardware. If you're familiar with the XJ, you know that there is an extra bolt here. After thinking about it for a couple of days, I elected to stay with the same size hardware, which is 7/16. And I did that because after pulling out my spacer, which is an upgraded heavy-duty spacer, I noticed, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but in that top one, that's the only remaining bolt, I can see remnants of some thread marks. I don't think that top bolt was connected for a long time, and I think it when it was connected, it was only by about a thread, because it seemed like there was a thread worth of stripped material on it when I pulled it out. And so, to make sure that I do get that threaded into the gearbox, I got one bolt 1/2 inch longer. So these are, I got 3 that are the regular length, which is 4 inches, and 1 4.5. Now I am going to also try to take advantage of this moment to fix one other problem that has been mildly irritating me. And that is that after I upgraded my suspension and steering, I took it in for an alignment, and when it came back from alignment, my steering wheel was about a 1/4 turn off. And I've just been dealing with it because it drives fine, but I do have some OCD, and that really kind of, I have to almost try to turn my OCD off when I drive the Jeep. And I've been wondering if, you know, they adjusted the track bar, and I know that can cause your steering wheel to turn, if that's what the problem was, or if one of the times that I've taken the steering wheel off, I put it on a tooth off. But I see that I can also potentially fix that by how I put the gears on from the steering column onto the new gearbox. So I may be able to correct it there. I took a rudimentary measurement of my tires to see how centered my front axle is. You can see that one is just barely outside my fender flare. And if we come over here, if I line this up just right, the wheels slightly turn, it's pretty close to the same. So I don't think that is the issue. So I'll see if I can get these teeth to line up the way I want. If not, then I will try to pull the steering wheel and hop it over one set of teeth. Upon further investigation, see on this one that there is a flat spot. Might be easier to see from this angle. So I will not be able to rotate the teeth on the steering shaft onto the gearbox. So that means I'll probably have to look at the steering wheel for that adjustment. So with that solved, I think we are about ready to give this a go. There it is. Steering box is in. We were not able to film it, but we did get it lined up and in, and I've used my feeler gauge to determine that all the bolts are through. I was able to use the 4-inch size on all of them, even through the top. I've got good purchase. So that is done. Next thing to do is get the retaining bolt through the steering shaft right there. It came with plugs from the rebuild, so I'll have to remove those and then put the lines back in. Okay, I have my lines plumbed in, got my retaining bolt in. So the last thing before bleeding is the pitman arm, which I was lucky enough that it just like slid right into place. I'm sure anybody watching this knows there are 4 grooves in the pitman arm that line up with corresponding grooves on the shaft, wider grooves than just the normal teeth. So it's not going to go on if it's not properly lined up. So I'm there. So one thing that would be a good idea to check before you got everything hooked up was that the steering box is in its center position, or whatever position lines up with the steering wheel and the tires. I took that for granted and just put it in, and I just had a minor panic attack thinking, you know, what if it was one rotation around? So I took a moment, threw the jack under it, and just cycled the wheels, and to my relief it was centered, so I got kind of lucky. But don't take that for granted. That was poor judgment on my part. That's a really easy check. Grab a set of vice grips, put it on there, and just rotate it around. Make sure it is positioned where you want it. So now that I have that confirmed, I'm going to finish tightening on the pitman arm and then bleed. Alright, I finished off the small bottle of power steering fluid, which filled it up, looks like normal. Now I need to cycle it. So if I can have you get inside and turn the wheel. Okay, now back the other way. There's some bubbles. Good. Okay, just keep going back and forth. I think I do recall from previous experience that it tends to bubble turning left and not right. So that's probably has something to do with the which pressure line is engaged. That is following suit here. So we will continue to work on this. I think I also remember at one point turning the vehicle on and getting the power steering pump involved, which, if I remember right, was also helped, but that's after we get some fluid into the gearbox. Oh, that was a really good one. So we'll continue to do that, and then we should have this just about wrapped up at that point. I have great news. I drove the Jeep after I got the steering box put in. It was dark, so I didn't film it, but my steering wheel is now properly oriented without any further adjustments. And I can't tell you what a relief that is to have that lined up. I'm not sure what was going on with the previous gearbox that was causing that adjustment to be off. Like I said, it lined up initially until I took it to get aligned professionally at the shop, and it came back about a quarter turn off and has been that way since. But everything just seemed a lot tighter and was really nice to drive. It is firmer driving, steering than it was previously. I don't know if something needs to break in or if my old box was just that worn out, but this was definitely the appropriate move to do a remanufactured box and get it all installed, all the hardware and everything. So the Jeep is back up and running. It is back on the road. As always, if you found this entertaining or helpful, informative in some way, please think about subscribing, and if you have similar experiences or questions, put them down in the comments. I read those and respond to them, and I appreciate you watching.
Cows everywhere. Look at his face.
He must work out.
His face is really cool looking though.